As we begin our first class, chapter 1 on the GPS for the soul, the beginner's guide to Tanya, I do want to mention the passing today of Lieutenant Colonel Stanton Altsman of Civil Air Patrol member. He was a veteran, but also he was in the Civil Air Patrol Air Force Auxiliary for 67 years.
Wow.
He was in the Civil Air Patrol. And he passed away this morning, left his wife, also Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Altsman. And so I want to dedicate tonight's learning in his memory, that he should have, our learning together should be in his memory, in his chus. So let's dive in. The Tanya is the magnum opus, really, the magnum opus of the Alter Rebbe, the founding Lubavitcher, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad Hasidic movement. There were a number of Hasidus came came to being with the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov had many disciples. The primary disciple from the Baal Shem Tov was the Mezritcher Maggid. The Mezritcher Maggid had a number of disciples as well. They did not have one prominent leader amongst them, so they split up into different groups of Hasidim in different areas. The Alter Rebbe was from Lithuania. He was a Litvak, and he was sent back to Lithuania to continue the teachings of Hasidus in Lithuania. One of the fascinating aspects of Lithuania at that time was the stronghold of an intellectual pursuit of Torah par excellence. The Vilna Gaon was a great leader at the time, and it was a bastion of Torah education going on in Vilna. And they were not open to the teachings of Hasidus. They were not into the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And that is one of the interesting parts, that the Alter Rebbe was sent to work on teaching Hasidus in that environment. Excuse me. And it was his characteristic trait anyway, but how much more so in Vilna, to use wisdom, understanding, and knowledge in the definition and the pursuit of these deepest mystical teachings of the Torah, to grasp them and be able to share them in I won't say layman's language, but near layman's language. And the Tanya is his magnum opus. The Tanya is essentially a compilation of the advice that he had been giving to individuals who sought his wisdom time after time after time after time, people coming back and asking Alter Rebbe questions, and there just wasn't time to keep answering everyone's individual queries. And so the Tanya was, in a sense, a compilation of these wisdoms brought together into one format. And if you look at the original Tanya and you read the foreword to it, he'll explain that it is understood that writing is not the same as meeting face-to-face, because if you're meeting face-to-face, you can see the person's reaction, and you can understand the person individually, and you can know what they're hearing and understanding and adapt it as you're going. And a book isn't that way. It's dependent on the person who's reading the book. It's dependent on their capacity to grasp and understand what they're reading. So there are limitations to it. At the same time, the Alter Rebbe was discussing the fact that all of these teachings were the people who know him well. And so in that sense, even now, when we go to learn Tanya, it's because in some essence level, the Alter Rebbe already knows our neshama, our soul, and knows that level that we're going to be asking questions about, and he's already addressing our concerns. Now, I don't understand that fully, because I'm not at that level where I can understand the ongoings of souls and different people's souls and things. But at some level, we are connected because we are learning the Alter Rebbe's Tanya and his teachings of Hasidus. And so we are establishing a connection with the Alter Rebbe in that sense. What we're reading here, this GPS for the soul, which is distributed to active service members and to veterans, free of cost by Aleph Institute. And this actually is a special printing just by Aleph. So this particular printing is only for active service members and veterans. But this is a compilation of classes that were taught by Zalman Nelson in the concept of the Tanya. So it's not word for word, but it's an overview, and we're going to learn through this together as an overview to grasp the concepts. And who knows, if we finish all of our learning, we may turn around and go back to the beginning, actually learn the Tanya inside. Over 20 years ago, slightly over 20 years ago, I took on a volunteer position in Chicago at the old Anshe Tikhtin synagogue, Mikra Kodesh Anshe Tikhtin. It was a synagogue that was slowly, people had moved out of the community and membership was going down and down. They couldn't afford a rabbi. The building started becoming in disrepair, and they couldn't even get a minyan together for Shabbos anymore. And so it was a matter of someone coming in and to take some responsibility. So I stepped in as the visiting rabbi for a couple of years there. And we started a class. I think initially it was Thursday nights we started the class. And we met in person for a while. Then when there was not enough people even to have the synagogue anymore, so then we met in my house for a long time. And when COVID came, we started learning online. And I can tell you that some of you have been in classes with me before. Dave Novak and Bernie Bromberg have been learning with me every week now for over 20 years.
Wow.
And yes, we take a break for Passover, we take a break for holidays, we take a break for my summer responsibilities for Air Force Auxiliary, but we just keep coming back to it. And we started off, we learned the first book of Chumash, of Bereshis, with Chumash and Rashi, did the whole thing. Then we started learning Tanya. We finished the entire first book of Tanya, went through all of that. Then we started learning Sichos. We continue, but it's a weekly commitment to learning Torah. And it's been great. It's been a wonderful relationship. They've joined some of the JLI classes. They might join this class, I don't know. But I have to be careful because they remember and they'll start quoting, but Rabbi, you said. Well, let's be careful. But let's dive in. I do like to have cameras on if possible, and good lighting in front of you so we can actually see your faces. It helps me adjust the class to see what's people are getting and not getting, and how I can adjust it. But at the same time, it also makes for more of a community when we can all see each other as well. But not required. If it comes a time that's not good for you and you need to do something else, that's fine as well. I do like to have everyone jump in and ask questions at any time. So don't hesitate to interrupt and say, hey, could you explain that, or go into something more, or give an example of your own life and things. It's meant to be a group discussion and not just a talking white beard. So here we go. So we're on GPS for the Soul, an introduction to Tanya. We're on page 9. We found out when we were studying, Stan and I had a class in Tanya for a while. Gosh, it's been months. I don't know when did we stop? It was like beginning of the summer of last year.
Part of a year. I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But definitely was a discussion, and I learned so much more when people jump in and ask for insights and thoughts along the way. So very helpful. But we also discovered that this does not go chapter by chapter with the Tanya. So if you want to learn Tanya side by side, this one, you can't look at chapter by chapter. It doesn't work that way. Some of these chapters cover 2 or 3 chapters simultaneously. So this is not a direct correlation, but rather we'll work through some of the ideas. Okay? Chapter 1. Who am I? I think that's the first part of Tanya, is to come to understand what's going on in our lives. We all go through struggles. We all go through all kinds of stuff, but understanding the makeup of who we are. We're not just this physical being. And I think one of the important quotes we get to at some point, the Alter Rebbe explains that if you're getting deep into your prayer service, let's say you're davening, you're praying, and you're getting really into it, and this foreign idea comes in to completely distract you. So you could get despondent and say, gosh, I thought I was really doing good. I thought I was really communing with God. I was getting somewhere. And then this foreign idea comes in completely and derails me. And so I must not have been doing a good job to begin with. And the Alter Rebbe comes and says, no. It's the opposite. If you were just one soul and you were struggling with one idea or the other, then yes, you could say that your prayer service was not on target because you got distracted, right? But if we come to realize that we have a godly soul and we have an animal soul and they're constantly fighting, well, you know how combatants work, right? If one guy starts to win, he starts succeeding, he starts to really get somewhere, that's when the other one comes up with a whole new level of energy to combat it. So then if we stop and realize we have a godly soul and an animal soul, and if you're in the middle of a spiritual experience, then of course the animal soul is going to interfere and jump in because it's starting to lose the battle. So that makes total sense. So it's not that your prayer time or your beinoni, your meditation was not successful. No, because you were being successful, the animal soul has to jump in and try and wrestle with it. So then you get to realize that, I'm not that bad off as I thought it was. The error comes in not understanding how we as human beings function, and particularly how we as Jewish people have this constant struggle between the godly soul and the animal soul. It's not, borrowing a term from psychology, it's no wonder we're schizophrenic. Of course we are. We've got two souls battling over the same body to have complete control. So it makes perfect sense, right? The other aspect we want to talk about is that if our expectations are of one thing and then they're clearly not met, so we can feel failure. But who says those were the right expectations to begin with? We've all seen teenagers over the years go through all kinds of troubles, right? They had expectations. We, when we were teenagers, had expectations of who we are, what we are. And then when we have a fall, it's crushing. Put a few years, put a few decades on that life, and you have a whole different perspective. And, a bad day is not the end. I have one of the stories I love to share is, so there's a Moish is Milwaukee. He was in Milwaukee and finished his high school and everything. He grew up in a strongly Jewish family and didn't know what to do with his life. So he joined the army, and they put him in the explosive ordnances detonation program. And he ended up going off to Afghanistan. And I asked him, I said, coming back from your service, what was an influence that helped you in your day-to-day living back in the world? And he smiled and he said that there was a day in Afghanistan when there was an explosive device that had to be dealt with, and it was 5 kilometers out, and he's got his gear with him, and that 70-pound ruck of his stuff that he's got to take with him, and the battalion is going out with him, and they're heading out, and they're not even half a click out, and along the roadside in Afghanistan, they didn't have proper sewage systems. So there's just basically a sewage gutter running along the roadside, just flowing along the roadside. And he fell in completely and was covered with, you got it. But the mission is the mission. And they hiked in the desert sun for the next 4.5 clicks. And when they get to the site, everyone else is now going to take a rest, and he's got to get to work. He's got to take care of this explosive device, diffuse it completely. And now they got to hike back another 5 clicks in the desert sun. And for some reason, like, no one wanted to walk with him. When they get back to base, he strips off, he showers off, he stays under the hot water for as long as possible, cleaning off, scrubbing down. He downs like 5 antibiotic tablets and cleans up. But after deployment, coming home to the States, getting a job in sales, no matter what the day brings, in comparison, it's not a bad day. So the advantage of experience and age puts everything into perspective, because we're not devastated when our goals aren't met the way we think they ought to be, putting things in perspective. And here the Alter Rebbe wants to put our life in perspective as well, and help us understand what it is that we're meant to be doing here. What is our mission on earth? And how do we play into that? How does it play itself out? What are our expectations in this life? And if we have a good set of expectations, then we can be happy in our lot and we can serve God with joy. But it's setting up proper expectations. And the Alter Rebbe is going to take us through all of these pieces. So the book is called Sefer Shel Beinoni, the book of the intermediary. So there's a Tzaddik, a beinoni, and a rasha. The Tzaddik is the righteous, beinoni is the intermediary, the rasha is the wicked. But let's define that, because in the vernacular, if you go to court and you go through the trial and they tell you Tzaddik Badin, you are righteous in judgment, that doesn't mean you're a holy person. It doesn't mean that you're a saint. It doesn't even mean that you're 100% right. It just means that more judges voted you innocent than voted you guilty. That's all it means, right? So we get this idea in our head that the tzaddik is the guy who does more good than evil. The one who's the beinoni, the intermediary, he's kind of 50-50. And the rasha is the guy who's more wicked than he is good. But those are borrowed terms from a court of decision making. But that's not what the Talmud talks about. The Talmud, when using these terminologies, the Talmud is actually talking about a much deeper inner status than that superficial in judgment decision. What we're going to be looking at is deep within the individual, what is going on in his daily life and his daily struggle, in his mission on earth. What is actually going on? And as we dive into those more deeply, we'll get a better understanding of how this plays itself out. But on page 11, he says, let's talk again for about the different souls, right? There are 2 souls. The first soul is responsible for animating our bodies. It's called the animal soul because, like any other animal, it's alive. And that doesn't mean, God forbid, that we're literally animals, but we are in the animal kingdom. You know, we have movement. Unlike plants that don't move, we have movement. We eat and we procreate, and this is the animal kingdom that we're part of. Where we are distinct from the animal kingdom. So you have the inanimate, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and then you have medabrim, those who speak, those who have a command of a language, those who can actually create language. Here's the distinction. Animals do communicate. And in fact, there may be even some level of communication within the plant kingdom as well. But medabrim is the capacity to create language and to be able to communicate that with that, right? And so that's a whole new level, and this is the level of the human being. But we're still within the animal kingdom. Eat, sleep, etc., right? And the nature of the animal is to do what feels good. That's it. Sleep when you're tired, eat when you're hungry, procreate, have fun. That's what the animal likes to do. That's what the animal soul is bound to do. That's what the animal soul is created to do, right? And it's not that that's bad. That's what life is. That's what existence is. When the animals do what they're supposed to do, and they all do what they're supposed to do, then they're doing exactly what they're created for. But man, in addition to medabrim, being able to speak and create language, man also has the choice to choose between doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. And we'll get into right and wrong a little bit later. But the idea of choice, that's a human capacity only, the opportunity to have choice. So can we overcome the animal soul? And the answer is absolutely. We absolutely can. And that is the intellectual capacity. Even within the animal soul, there's a level of an intellectual capacity, the ability to choose what we're going to do with things, right? And that's why when we look at those that the human kingdom that are not Jewish, they have an animal soul, an enlivening soul, but they also have the capacity to choose with their intellect what to do and what they choose to be right and what they choose to be wrong, and they have the capacity to make those choices. And so that, again, is a uniquely human capacity, the right to be able to choose and define right and wrong. I'm looking at page 13. The second soul, which we call as a chelik elika mimal mamish, an actual part of God's essence, that godly soul is a fire of its own, and it has a passion for godly things. And that's all that's important to it. This godly soul could not care less about food. It could not care less about sleeping. It only wants to serve God. And in the means by which it can serve God, that is where it finds its satisfaction. And you have these two souls constantly battling over who gets control. When you have this constant battle within, and the Alter Rebbe uses this example later, it's as if there's a city and there are two kings that are warring over control of the city, and each king wants absolute obedience of the kingdom. So the godly soul wants the entire body and all of its functions to function solely for the service of God. And the animal soul wants to have its animal pleasures. And they duke it out. And that's the constant battle. Now, with this in mind, let's go into the different categories then. So what is a tzaddik? So the tzaddik is the one who has fought the battle and has won the battle. It's a title. It's not a work in progress. It's a title. You know, you've already achieved that status. So it's not I want to say, I'm going to use the title of colonel, for example. It's not a wannabe colonel, it's a colonel. To get that, so many other things have to have been accomplished. It didn't just get there by itself, right? So the tzaddik has waged the war to the degree that the desire of the animal soul is dead, gone within him. The animal soul has become so controlled that it only wants to do what the godly soul wants, and it has become so attached to the godly soul that it doesn't have a separate one. That's all that it wants. And so the tzaddik, the righteous one, from deep within, there's no longer a battle. Battle's over. It's been won. Now, are there degrees of tzaddik? Yeah, there's still degrees within a tzaddik, because there are some tzaddikim who may have a little vestige of the animal soul still clinging to that. And so there might be some fond memories of things in the past that were not righteous, but have been let go of, but they don't have any sway. And the thought process is always to the godly things. That's the tzaddik. So there could be the one who is completely righteous, and there could be the one who is righteous, but has some vestige of the old stuff as well. Where do we find our pleasure in? That's the question. But the tzaddik, it's completely lost within him. Let's flip to the opposite side. Who's the rasha? Actually, let's not go there yet. Yeah, we're going. Page 15. Let's go to rasha. The rasha is the one whose animal soul now has total sway. The animal soul says what to do, and the godly soul has retreated deep within and is hidden deep within, not finding any expression within the body. The animal soul is completely won over, and it does what it wants. Now, even within the rasha, there are different degrees. The rasha could have the guy who his thoughts he has trouble controlling, and they bring up speech that's inappropriate and even actions that are inappropriate, but every time he regrets them. And they're not serious offenses, and they don't last long, but he constantly regrets them, right? So here's the guy who's constantly doing teshuvah. He's constantly working on improving, and he's fighting the good fight. But at the same time, you could have the rasha. Actually, let me rephrase that a second. The rasha is the one, he could be doing some teshuvah along the way, but he keeps falling back into it, and he does have his mind and speech and actions, or at least one of those categories, will go off. But he wants to be better. But you could also have the rasha who's at the other extreme of this, who is totally happy with all of the vices in the world and can't wait for the next one, in speech and in thought and in action. So within the rasha, you have this huge span of the guy who's totally evil and loving it, to the guy who messes up, but he repents and he's trying to do better, right? So what's the beinoni? Who's the guy in the middle? What's the beinoni? The beinoni is the guy who is in the fight, but he never loses. In thought, in speech, and in action, he never does wrong. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't speak about it. He doesn't do anything wrong. Now you might say, wait a second, isn't that a tzaddik? No. The tzaddik is like a title. He's done it. He's there. He won. He doesn't have the struggle anymore, right? The beinoni is the one for whom it's always a struggle. In thought or speech or action or in all of the above, it's always a struggle, but he always wins. When an evil thought comes to mind, he pushes it away with both hands. He starts to say something wrong, he stops. He starts to do something wrong, stops. Not in thought, not in speech, not in action. He does not do something wrong, but it is a daily and constant struggle. The rasha is the one who loses. He may lose a little bit and regrets it, or he may lose a lot and has no regrets. But he errs. The beinoni, the intermediary, is the guy who never errs. He never makes the mistake. But he's always in the battle. And one of the things we'll talk about is the idea of let's switch to food for a second. One of my favorite categories. Is there are some times that we like sweet delicacies, but there are other times we want something sharp and spicy that really gets you going, right? We like both of those. Well, Hasidus compares that to our service to God. There are tzaddikim, righteous ones, whose service is always sweet. It's always right. It's always sweet. But the spicy ones, are the ones who are in the battle. They're fighting the fight. We'll talk about also the difference between one who serves God and one who serves him not. Now you could say, wait a second, if a person doesn't serve God, so that's not a tzaddik, right? No, I'm talking about a tzaddik. We have a tzaddik who doesn't serve God because that's his personality. He's not hot-blooded. He doesn't have a temper. He loves to sit and learn. And by his temperament, he is just a tremendously righteous person who doesn't say, do, or he doesn't think, say, or do anything wrong. But that's his nature. So he's not fighting. He's not struggling. He's not serving. Service. And you're all service members, right? So service is an active verb. The tzaddik has already earned the title. It's not an active verb. The one who is struggling, who's in the fight, that's the one who's serving God. The one who is struggling with his yetzer hara, his evil inclination, the one who's struggling not to be an animal, is the one who's serving God. Go for it, Stan.
You just hit on a point I was going to ask. Yetzer hara and animal soul, are those the same thing or related?
No. So the animal soul, and we had a little Fabringen on Purim, about 2.5 hours long. We were online, and Fabringen is a nice discussion where you take a topic and you talk about it, but you get into actually how do you implement these ideas, right? So I remember the Fabringen when we talked about a gnat is considered one of the lowest creatures in the world because it's the only creature that takes from the world and never gives back nothing. There are blood-sucking creatures that at least they leave an excrement which works as fertilizer. The gnat doesn't even do that. It just takes from the world, right? But at least the gnat is doing what it was created for. If we do something opposite of what we're created for, it can be said we're worse than a gnat who only takes from the world, and we're worse than that. because we're not doing what we're created for, we're doing less than that. So the animal soul, it just wants animal pleasures. It's not looking to do anything evil. It's not looking to do anything contrary to God. It just wants its animal pleasures. So eat, sleep, procreate, smile, have fun, roll in the grass. That's all. And that's happy and it's fine. But that's not, it's only doing what it was created to do, right? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is that inclination towards saying something wrong, thinking something wrong, or doing something wrong, contrary to God's will. So the animal soul just wants to do what animals do. What was that song from the Broadway show, Little Abner, doing what comes naturally? So that's it, right? But the Yetzer Hara wants to do something against the service of God. And where does that come from? How does that come to play? We'll get into that later in Tanya as well. But they're definitely distinct.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm looking at the conclusion, page 19. In the titles, Tzaddik, Rasha, and Beinoni can apply to a person's conduct alone, which is where we get those borrowed terms also in judgment, right? But it also can refer to the state of our inner world. And in the coming chapters, we'll give a deeper explanation of the makeup of that inner world and empower us to choose the higher path, the upper path. There's a story here, which is changing our approach. It was an interesting story there. When we know we're being tested, when we know that this is the challenge, then we can better accept the challenge. We could better dive into it, right? When you don't know, that's when the challenge comes. And I've heard it said, you can bear almost any pain when you know it's temporary. But when you don't know that it'll stop, that's when it's hardest. Right? So if we understand that our job here in this world is to fight the fight, that our job is to get into the world and be engaged and be involved and still be holy, and that it's meant to be a challenge. I was telling some high school students the other day, we were having a Fabringen, and I've been teaching some leadership classes and things, and we were talking about the idea of life as a challenge. I'd have thought that by the time I hit this age, I wouldn't be having the same challenges that I had 20 or 30 years ago, because I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm more experienced. No, my Yetzer Hara is older and wiser and more experienced, and I have the same stupid challenges that I've always faced, and hopefully I'm doing better at them. I've got some more skill and some insight and some tact to work with them. But yes, it's the same thing. This week, my wife and I celebrated 39 years of marriage. And
Congratulations.
our 40th year. And it's funny because now we talk about a lot of the same things, miscommunications, misunderstandings. It's not what I meant to say. The same things we did before, But now we have enough confidence in ourselves and our relationship and our marriage that it doesn't have the same stress level. We can accept, hey, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. That was stupid. And we go on. But it's not taken as a personal threat. When we're younger, everything we take personally and everything it seems threatening. And we get older. In the Mishnah, Pirkei Avos, the ethics of our fathers, there's talks about different ages. Age of 50 is the age of wisdom and counsel. Age of 100, dead from the world. Oh, what does that mean? Dead from the world means that the world's challenges don't apply anymore. All the things that people get upset about in life, at 100, been there, done that. Nah, there is nothing to get excited about. But if you look at Baruch Hashem, we've moved to Morristown, New Jersey. We're here with one of my daughters, and we have Kanai Nahara, a bunch of grandkids in the house the whole day as well. And we have our basement garden apartment, but we go upstairs different times throughout the day and help out with the kids. Kids get upset about it, nothing, about truly nothing, totally nothing. And they get all bent out of shape. And we laugh because that's just childish, right? But the guy who's 80 is looking back at the guy who's 60 saying, dude, get over it. That's not that serious. And at 60, I look at my kids who, in their 30s and saying, this will pass. This is not a big deal, right? But we say that with the wisdom that comes with age and experience. So the same thing here, if we can realize that everything that happens in life is a part of divine providence, that God is guiding us along the way, then every challenge that comes up is for us. It's a benefit, right? We talk about, Abraham had 10 tests, and the 10th test was the binding of Isaac, to offer his son Isaac up on an altar. But Chassidus asked the question, God doesn't know what Avram is going to do? Of course he does. So what's the test? Test is not for God. The test is for Avram. Avraham doesn't know what he's capable of. And the people around him don't know what he's capable of. So the test, which seems so stressful, is for his benefit. And for the people around him, for their benefit. For us to be able to understand that the tests and challenges we go through, those are opportunities for growth. Opportunities to see a different side of things. And to move forward. I had a very challenging day today in the sense that I had a number of things that have to get done, and they all have to get done soon, and each had their own timetable, and I didn't know how to juggle all these pieces. And I remember talking to somebody. I thought I was going to be driving out to Philadelphia today. When I was picking up matzahs at the Port of Elizabeth, I thought I was going to be doing this errand here, then going to the Port Elizabeth for pick up the matzahs, and then going to Philadelphia for this meeting. And the timing was off because I have to pick up the matzahs before a certain time. I don't have to be in Philadelphia until a latter time. There's all this downtime wasted. I've got so many other things to do. How am I going to juggle this? And I was speaking with someone in Philadelphia, another chaplain from Aleph Institute. And I was saying, I was maybe making arrangements to meet with him in the afternoon and have dinner while I'm waiting for the next meeting. And he texts back that he thought I was talking about Friday, but today is Thursday, and he's actually, today is too busy, and it would be very difficult to meet. And my response to him was, and a voice message, my response to him was, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing today, but God does, and I guess we'll figure it out. And then one thing after another fell into place. The meeting I was going to this evening was a hospice call. The hospice call isn't necessary anymore. Now we just have to schedule the funeral. So I didn't need to go to Philadelphia, so I didn't have all that downtime. I was able to, the running off to get the matzahs, couldn't wait till later. It had to happen now, so I ran out and got that. And it all happened exactly as God meant it to happen. 10 years ago, probably not even 10 years ago, I would have been so stressed because I was trying to control my day. I had an agenda, I had a schedule, I had a plan, and it was totally getting messed up. Now, I have no idea what I'm doing today. I've got some things that I'm supposed to get done. I don't know how they're going to play out, but God does, so let's just get started. And so it's a much more relaxed environment. So, oh, by the way, one of the crises that came to my mind was I need to let you know that we're not going to have class tonight because I have to go to Philadelphia and I have a hospice call I have to make. But I didn't get to that. And by the time I didn't get to that, I found out it wasn't going to happen because he'd already passed. So there was another stress that I could have driven myself nuts about, and it all worked. It all worked. So next week, God willing, we'll talk about the second soul, and we'll go into this godly soul a little bit more about it, what it means to be an actual part of God above, and those pieces of it. But for tonight, in the last few minutes of tonight's class, I always like to ask, what do you walk away with? What did you get out of tonight's class that you might be able to actually do something with? So mic's off, please share, and everyone speaks up, and you can wait till I call on you, or you can go ahead and volunteer.
I actually got a better appreciation for the definitions than I had before. I thought I understood those concepts, and I understand a little better now.
That's excellent. And I have to tell you, we do a daily study that includes Tanya, a little bit of the Torah scroll itself, a little bit of Tanya, and a bit of Jewish law from Maimonides every single day. I've been learning Tanya daily for 40 years now. I'm thinking I'm beginning to understand.
So what I noticed is by the definitions, the large majority of the population are rasha.
Right. By the technical definition, I fit
Almost
into the
everybody,
category.
actually.
Pardon?
Almost everybody.
I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I can tell you, I know where I fit. So it's a hard pill to swallow, right? You know, as we're growing up, you know, Mama says tzaddik, little tzaddik, my zizit tzaddik. You know, growing up, we do something semi-nice, and we're already being called tzaddik. And you start thinking that tzaddik means when you're doing the right thing, right? No, not actually, you know. But that reality check helps us put in perspective what's really going on, where we're really holding, and not setting up false expectations. And amongst Chassidim, we talk about halavai a beinoni, like if only to be a beinoni, right? But we'll get into this. It's not that we should get upset about, and it's nothing we should get depressed about, God forbid. Because this is God's fault. He made this world, and he made me the way he made me. and I'm fighting just to keep my head above water. And we're going to find out that that's the point. The whole point is to stay in the game, not to quit. It's not about winning. You know, I remember in high school talking about it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. That's it. It's how we live our lives. It's not about being a tzaddik or a beinoni. It's about fighting the good fight and staying in the game and not quitting. And God their lives drives pleasure every time. In Kabbalah, we talk about taking down the eagle, that the eagle or ego flies high. And every time we refuse to give in, Kaviyachol, so to speak, God smiles. Now, that's a lofty concept, but think about watching kids. You know, how many times do we see our kids do something really good and we kvel? We are so proud of them. Just a minute, he slapped his brother. But here in this moment, he went to do something kind and we kvel. That's it. That's exactly it. It's for those moments that we rip the eagle down from his high heights. We take the ego down and we say, no, I'm not doing that. And overcome that ego and that pride and bring it down and choose to do something good. That God, like a parent watching a little kid, says, oh, look at that one. And we are so proud, right? That's the game. Ed, you're going to say something. I know it's coming. It's coming right there. Go for it.
Okay, one of the quotes I liked from the book when they were explaining what the Tanya is, they said it's like putting on a pair of glasses. And I thought that was a very good quote, at least in part, about trying to explain what the Tanya is. It makes things clearer. And sometimes as we go through life, yeah.
At this age, like which pair? Wow. I get up from the computer and I walk around realizing, how come I can't see? Oh, it's the wrong pair. Go back and get the right pair. But yes. And if you remember, we used to talk about rose-colored glasses, right?
Right.
You can choose to see the glass is half full. That's a choice. My favorite one was you can be upset because a rose bush has thorns, or you can celebrate that a thorn bush has roses. It's your choice. Choose the right glasses. Yeah. And that's it. Absolutely. Having a good perspective on these things. Moish.
I like the fact that you said that like the beinoni is like a verb. And Tzaddik is more like a noun. It just is. I never looked at it like that. And the beinoni is all about avodas Hashem, like trying to work on yourself. The Alter Rebbe called the true chassid of his was a person who davened with kavana and continually worked on himself. So that just put that difference in a different perspective on those two explanations for me. But like you were talking about how you had a crazy day, and I had like a really difficult day today too. This morning, it's like on the phone for 3 hours of Social Security. They're saying I owe $24,000, and so like I'm like wigging out. Just got married. Like where am I gonna come up with this money? Like all this stuff, and then I watched the video, a short, and it was Jem. It was the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, whatever you're going through, whether it's materially or spiritually, it's to assist you it's gonna work out, and it's gonna end up assisting you to where you need to go, what you need to do, whatever. So I had to bang, as L'chaim OG says, you had to bang on the bitachon, and really, I'm trying to live like I'm in Gula now, so I had to have that Shabbos consciousness completely, and especially with my new wife and the family and stuff like that. And so it was very, very challenging. But that whole new perspective of what a beinoni is pretty significant.
You'll hear from me a number of times. One of my favorite quotes. There's a poster I had in my room in high school. It's hard to remember that you came to drain the swamp when you're up to your armpits in alligators.
Yeah. I was raised in Florida, so I know all about that.
So exactly, so you've got this goal and you've got this purpose, but when you're just getting through crisis after crisis and management by firefighting, it's hard to remember what the purpose was, right? But one of the things Alter Rebbe is telling us is this is the purpose. Stay in the game, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
David, not to worry. We're going to record God willing next week's class as well, and hopefully we'll post it. But there's always good discussions, anywhere along the way, so don't hesitate. And Jeff came in late thinking that it's an hour and a half class and it's only an hour class and we're finished, but we just wanted to see his pretty face anyway. George, Jenny,
Yes, sir.
thoughts?
For
What are you walking
me,
away with tonight?
it identifies who I am. Coming into this religion, it's kind of here and there, but this finally breaks it down to what I need to know and the walk I need to know that make me who I am. My actions are based on who I am.
What does that knowledge give you?
It gives me the idea that sometimes I need to think before I act.
Why is
think
Jenny
before I say-
smiling when you say that?
I don't know why she's smiling. Think with anything I do, I need to think it out first before I do it, instead of doing my normal reactive.
Yeah, but it's not easy. It's a challenge. It's always a challenge. That's the fight. Jenny, how about you?
Well, I think that for me, need to understand who we are and what we're working with, what tools when it comes to the relationship with God. I mean, we know that everything works out for a reason. Sometimes we don't understand, but he knows what the outcome is going to be. We just have to kind of keep staying in the game,
Right.
and not give up.
Right.
We all go through hard times. We've have a challenge on our hands right now, and I'm just trusting Hashem that He's going to bring us through. Because
And that bitachon, that trust, will give you the calm to attack the problem properly, without getting overly lost in the unnecessary.
Well, that's not me. That's the other one.
But that's what comes with the bitachon, the calm in the situation. So the blessing is that all of these things should be revealed good, not hidden good, but revealed that you can actually appreciate it. Fred, pop in. What are your thoughts from tonight? What do you walk away with? You have to go off mute first. Fred, you're on mute. You'll have to go off mute first.
Is that better?
There you go.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay. The sound seldom works on this, so I'm impressed it's working. I think, kind of distilling it down quite a bit, it's really just the message of taking away is to kind of accept things, but there's a reason to accept them, which is they are this way for a reason.
And the example I like to give is when an adult takes the shiny toy away from the toddler, and the toddler screams because he's being deprived of his toy. But the adult understands that that was a knife. So the toddler didn't understand that. His perception of it was a shiny toy. The adult understands it's dangerous. The difference between that child's intellect and the adult's intellect is only a matter of years and experience and education. The difference between my intellect and understanding and God's infinite is incomparable. So why would I scream and cry and get upset about something if God, who loves me, is giving this to me or taking this away from me? He certainly knows better. So why am I upset? I don't understand what he understands, but obviously it's for my best interest, right? There's this beautiful story of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe when he was a boy. He was like 9 or 10 years old, whatever. And his father, the Rebbe Rashab, was going out of town for a week-long thing. And his son wanted to go with him. He really wanted to go with him. And his father wasn't going to take him. And his father initially his father was going to take him, but his teacher said he'll miss too much Torah studies. You know, taking this time off now, he'll miss too much of his Torah studies. He really shouldn't be going. And the father agreed, and the kid didn't get to go. And the kid was crying when dad left. He was really upset. He was crying. And then he suddenly stopped crying. Now his mother was worried. That a kid is crying because he didn't get to do what he wanted to do makes sense.
Mhm.
So she asked him, "Why did you stop crying?" And this 10-year-old said, "My father loves me. He says I shouldn't go. My teacher loves me. He says I shouldn't go. Clearly I shouldn't go. Why am I crying?" If we could have that understanding that God is in charge of everything that's going on, that everything comes to us, and if we could appreciate that, if we could settle ourselves with that, then what am I upset about? What am I distressed about? What am I unnerved about? It's perfect. It is perfect. We have to embrace it. So, again, between the child and the adult, there's only a little difference of intellect, of understanding, right? Between us and God, there's no way, you know, I always love those comments about people that say about, I don't understand God. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah. Why is that a surprise? On the flip side, truly, on the flip side, there are situations that have come up in our life, and I'll look heavenward and I'll think, and I'll just say to God, "What are you thinking?" Because I don't get it, right? But okay, so reality check. Of course you don't get it, Grossman. You know, who are you to understand these things anyway? But keeping in perspective, you know, yes, sometimes I look at God and I want to know, like, what are you thinking? But relax, jump in, make it a great day, right? Hey, Jeff, welcome on board. Nice to see you. You want to unmute and say hello to the folks?
Yeah, hi. I missed a good part of this session. I can see that. And I'm probably going to end up missing a bunch because I'm going to be in Israel at the end of April and I got security planned for next week.
Well,
all right, I'll catch you when I can.
yeah, absolutely. And believe me, the trip to Israel will be well worth it. So you go and you enjoy the time and be completely invested in what you're doing at the time. And when you come back, we'll still be hanging around, sitting and learning. You can always pop right back in. That's the nice parts.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So God willing, next week, same time, same channel, and we'll continue on from there.
Yep.
Thank you.